Welcome to the Massive Change Show. I'm Justin Foster.
And I'm Dr. Virginia Lacayo. In each episode, we have conversation with leaders who are getting in some good trouble by challenging paradigms and shaking the system.
And after each conversation, the episode shifts to the second show, where Virginia and I chat about what we learned from the guest.
If you know of any leaders who will make a great guest, please introduce us.
And of course, if you enjoy the show, please like, share, and leave a review.
Thanks for listening.
Welcome, David Morse. The two things I liked about you immediately is we have the same barber, and we're both marketing guys with very articulate, strong opinions about the fuckery going on in the world right now. So excited to have you on the Massive Change Show. Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, we have something else in common too. You live in Mexico City. I used to live in Mexico City, which is kind of relate to the story a little bit.
Yeah.
My career has been in multicultural marketing, specifically multicultural market research. My job has been to help companies, usually American companies, but work with some Mexican companies too, but to understand their consumers from a multicultural perspective. You know, DEI wasn't woke. That's why I tell some conservative people, because they get it's about understanding consumers, right? But I've also worked so much with companies that have taken a stand, and I wrote a book called Multicultural Intelligence: 8 Make or Break Rules for Marketing to Race, Ethnicity, and Sexual Orientation. And I talk about companies that back down, like I did last year with the transgender influencer that they fired, and trying to connect by supporting Pride Month, by celebrating identity, by celebrating diversity. That's what corporate America has always been about. And my thinking is we're in a shit place right now as a country. I don't like, I've always had an international background, a global. I lived in Mexico, I lived in Japan. I have a master's in international marketing. We are becoming a pariah in the eyes of the world, which may or may not be okay, but it's not okay because we're doing it all wrong. The shooting of Renee Good, what's happening in Minneapolis right now, and I can go on and on and on. This threatened invasion of Greenland, specifically though from a multicultural perspective, it has become apparent to me, and I think maybe more than half the country, that we are targeting foreigners in a terribly racist way. And I bring another hat to this. I'm kind of a history geek. I ended up in my 40s going back and getting a master's degree in history, because that's all I did was read history anyway. This is part of who we are, you guys.
Yes.
What is going on now has amazing comparisons with the early 1920s and the Immigration Act of 1924. That's when the United States decided to crack down on immigration. That's when they decided that there were too many of my folks, Eastern European Jews that had immigrated, and that there were too many Southern Italians. And they instituted the Immigration Act of 1924, which essentially brought back the old quota, made quotas so it was more Western Europeans, more Northern Europeans, because Jews in the thinking of the day and Southern Italians were not white. And the identity of America has always been, I've written another book. I've written 4 books. It's called An American Legacy: Racism, Nativism, and White Supremacy. And that is exactly what is going on here now.
And we were born the nation was born into that split, and I wrote an essay late last year called White Lies. And, so many things are just not true. And until we, especially as white Americans, it's not about white guilt. It's about white honesty about what our nation is. But it's not all that. Also, we wrote this amazing Constitution that's now being used as toilet paper, but also not the first time it's been used as toilet paper, but the most recent time. And we wrote this amazing, we had this this America's promise, as like Colin Powell used to call it, or, like this idea that the potentiality of what America was, the shining city on the hill that Reagan said, who also was a very, very complex and not very nice person in some ways, of course. But there was this idea, and that is dead now. I mean, it's dead. And I think that's part of why we wanted to talk to you, David, is you are what we call a system shaker, because you're not interested in teaching brands how to stay out of it. You're not interested in you staying out of it. And you are doing what we're doing, is you're not just attacking the systemic issues, you're pointing out the apathy and the hypocrisy. And I've noticed in recent days, we're recording, you're the first episode we're recording in 2026. In recent days, especially since Renee Good's murder, you're doubling down. And I love that. Like, keep doing that. Like, people that look like you and me, we got to keep doing that. Like, double down, put pressure on the apathetic, what I call the suburban class. Because you're a history nerd, I'm a history nerd, Virginia's a history nerd. Fascism is able to thrive because of the suburban class in any culture it's ever taken root in. And the people in the suburbias that say they don't like politics, fuck you. Like, you have to get involved in this. It's your job, or they are coming for you at some point, unless you're a knee bender or a bootlicker, like, so many people have become.
You're right.
Anyway,
right.
That's my rant to you, my rant to your eloquence. Let's dig in with the first question from Virginia. Yeah. So
go ahead. Hey.
Okay. So the big question, and I have a follow-up question, but after I ask that question, is what is your big idea that will piss off a lot of powerful people?
So I worked closely with corporate America to understand multicultural consumers, especially Hispanics, the ones that are being targeted now. My idea is, just on LinkedIn, where I'm posting a lot of my articles, and I get a lot of people responding. There's so many people out there. First of all, a new CNN poll just came out. I think Trump's got like 39% approval. It's low. And regarding some of these violent actions, like what's going on in Minneapolis, a huge number of people are opposed. My big idea is we're all looking at ourselves saying, what do we do? Yeah, the election's coming up in midterm. We have one power that nobody's ever talked about, and I haven't mentioned it yet, and that is the power of consumers, and
yes.
and the power that we have to get fucking brands to get behind us. These are the same brands, and yeah, I'm going to piss people off. The same brands that have touted the pride flags, that have had intensive DEI trainings, that have attacked systemic racism, that have trained their employees to understand that the racist history, like slavery and Jim Crow, have affected how Black people have been able to achieve things in this country. And the teaching of all that, the teaching of our history, is illegal in certain states. And that's the trend. And I think that, I remember the 70s. I earned this bald head. I remember when meat prices were crazy. Maybe you'll remember the Mary Tyler Moore show, the introduction, when she looks at a steak and she throws it in her basket like, oh, what the hell? Right. We boycotted meat for a week. I think it was. I remember my mother boycotting meat, and I was so proud of her. We had an impact, but we as consumers have a lot of power to get brands behind us. And brands are being silent. And I get it. I get it. I understand the risk that I'm taking in terms of my company, in terms of my person, by being as outspoken as I am. But I think that the time has come where we as consumers all need to take action. To your point, Justin, we're standing around, and I know I'm going to get hit for this one, but I'm not the first one to say it. The analogies with fascism, especially with what's happening in Minneapolis, are so evident. Myself, being a Jewish kid of my generation, I grew up, older Jewish, not relatives, but people at our synagogue. They were Holocaust survivors. They'd have tattoos. I grew up with that, and I grew up with this idea. What was wrong with Germany? How could they how could they stand by and watch that happen? And that's how I feel now. What is wrong with America? And I get the
Yeah.
history. We got a nasty history. We've got a great history. And here's part of what
Right.
gets me. Since World War II, I mean, yeah, we had slavery. We had Andrew Jackson, the Long Walk. We had the imperialism in Latin America of the late 19th century or early 20th century. But since World War II, when we emerged as a world power, we have stood for alliances. We have stood for NATO. We have stood by using collective alliances of friends around the world to ensure peace, to ensure a better planet. We established, some people like Sergeant Shriver established the Peace Corps. That stuff has come out of America. There's that America too. And when I complain on LinkedIn, I get these MAGA people telling me, I'll drive you to the airport, That's no, the answer, we are not going to get lost because we love this country too.
Yeah. Well, and they don't. And they don't. So anyway, sorry, Virginia, go ahead.
They love a person that's mean and imperialistic and racist.
Yeah. I have a follow-up question, David. Yeah. I'm not a marketer, but I have a degree on communication for social change. And I know that communication is is the main tool actually for developing a critical mass, to help people to think critically, to speak, to share values, to build some kind of shared vision. And marketing is communication as well. Marketing, I mean, if you use social marketing is to promote products, yes, but that, for the common good. And so from your perspective, because this is a big idea that is inviting us all to play our part, but what are you doing with the tools that you have and the resources that you have, your expertise, your job, your company, to create, to promote, to move forward this idea, to invite people to stand up?
I'm writing about it. I'm speaking about it every chance I get, despite the admonitions from my mother last night and from everybody else. Going to the marches, Kings. There'll be more of that, but I think there's some more forces that are taking root. I guess I was reading about a proposed boycott of Hilton because they're housing the ICE people in Minneapolis. One of my suggestions as a marketer, and I've got my own personal bias, I'm a market researcher. We worked on a study they're pretty open about letting me share. I'm not going to say the name of the company, but it was one of those brands that was accused of having a racist logo. Okay. And they hired us to do market research. They ended up changing the brand's name, but we talked to both sides as market researchers with the objective of giving our client an understanding of what the risks were, what the ideas were, what the beliefs were. We talked to people, older boomers who were white, who talked about we're sick and tired of woke and this racism against white people. And we talked to black folks and said, what do you think? You're going to apologize? You're just going to pull the name? That's going to make everything right? My point is they were able to successfully handle the replacement of the brand by coming to understand both parties. And I think that the answer is there somewhere. That there's going to have to be coming together. My only hope, my prayer is, I just wrote a book about Generation Alpha. What I heard interviewing those kids are kindness and a diversity that doesn't exist among boomers. I think that the future is there, but the immediate future is scary as fuck.
Yes. And go ahead, Virginia.
Well, I'm curious how the marketing industry is, because what I see now in terms of ads, in terms of social media, obviously, all the marketing in social media, how the marketing industry is contributing to the current state of mindset, of isolation, of prejudice, more of, seeing the world as it is and reproducing the status quo.
I mean, I think so much of it, from what I see, is walking backwards. Let's go back 5 years. Let's go back to 2020. it was Black Lives Matter. It was it was the Me Too movement. It was every. It was like things were finally kind of waking up after the murder of George Floyd opened our eyes. But there was backlash to it, and that's our history. There's always backlash. They get rid of Reconstruction. They get rid of a segregated South, and they tried to. You get Jim Crow emerging.
Right.
Um,
Well, what's interesting, David, to that too, and to Virginia, your question too, as a marketer, and also, I find it fascinating that there are some brands that are taking a stand that you wouldn't expect them to. And I think, Virginia, you've heard me talk about this, but the NFL, the NFL, good old boys, they didn't like Colin Kaepernick taking a knee, even though they don't, they don't know the backstory of it or blah, blah, blah. George Floyd's murdered. NFL does a pivot. And you think, okay, this is optics. But they kept doing it. And they've put tens of millions of dollars out of these. I think there's only one owner that's not white, the owner of the Vikings. Maybe there's one other now, or the Jaguar and the Vikings, two owners that are not white. And a bunch of, and you got some, like the Hunt family that owns the Chiefs, very conservative, very Trumpy. But collectively, the NFL is expanding their brand as a global brand. They have Kendrick Lamar last year and Bad Bunny this year is double fuck yous to Trump. But there was a thing that they did too is, there's this optics, and then there's things like when Trump was trying to get all these brands to cancel their diversity, equity, inclusion programs. And the NFL was one of the first to release a statement saying, we're not doing that. And I bring that up because the backlash to me is just cowardice. And it's what I call the coward's buffet. The coward's buffet is either endorsement, justification, hypocrisy, or silence. That's the coward's buffet of these people. And, like one of the most successful pride events or pride parades, surprisingly, was in Boise, Idaho for many years. And it still happened, but they lost like 60% of their corporate donors in last year's pride parade. How fucking cowardly are you? Like, do you like, and would you work for a boss that is that fucking wobbly with his or her moral clarity? That's the thing that gets me. And it's like there are models, Costco, Starbucks, Marriott. There are models that are showing you how to do it. Yeah. Anyway, did that answer your question, Virginia?
Yeah.
Okay. So, David, you're this thing about encouraging brands to take a stand and use the power of the marketplace to influence policy or influence things. And I kind of circle back to when we opened the show about, you are, as a marketing guy, very vocal and very open and very articulate. And besides the backlash, what are some of the other challenges that you're facing with this? Like, is it affecting your business, to ask it bluntly? Is it affecting your safety to be so open? And what are you doing about some of these challenges about your big idea?
I mean, the business has definitely been hurt. And I don't want to mention any brand names, but I have specifically been told that we were going to work with you, but we get kind of an ideological conflict. We're going to pull our business. Stop. What was the question again?
Okay, that's okay. So the question was, besides backlash, like trolls and comments and stuff on LinkedIn, how has your decision to take such a vocal and eloquent, by the way, stand impacted your business and your safety, your personal safety?
Thank you. I mean, my business has gone down. I've lost clients. I don't want to specifically name name a couple clients, but there was one project we were awarded, and then they pulled it back. They said, yeah, we've got a different ideological difference, and no, our sales are gone. But I feel that I have an obligation. I was talking to my mother. I think I already mentioned it to you, telling them about this podcast. She said, David, be careful. I started late in life. I'm gay. I have 2 daughters in high school, and Arizona is a purple state. I mean, thank goodness for our wonderful senator, Senator Kelly. But they go to school with a lot of MAGA people. I am concerned. Am I doing the right thing? Now, I am very, very rooted in history, as I've mentioned, and I feel like I need to speak up. You know, that we all need to speak up, or it's going to get worse. It's just going to get worse. You know, the trajectory towards authoritarianism is clear, and it's dangerous. You know, doing this podcast, I feel like is a big risk, and I weighed it, and I decided I need to do it. I need to speak up because the America that I know and I love. You know, I live through it all the time. I leave my house here in Scottsdale, a nice neighborhood, and I see the landscapers out there. I don't want to stereotype Latinos, but they're largely from Latin America. I know. I talk to them in Spanish, and I feel so badly for them because I think they're leaving their homes and they don't know if they're coming back. You know, and their families don't know if they're coming back. It is tragic. It is a tragedy of humanity. What is happening?
Yes, and now that we live here, and again, I'm a gringo too, like you, David. I'm very blessed to be married to a Latina, and I've had some perspective of it being married into a Latin and French family, and with Virginia. But you don't know till you're here. And we've had this conversation, like, now that we're here, why do people leave? Like, how desperate do you have to be to leave this place? In many ways, Mexico and Mexico City is like a person I know that lived here for many years and then moved back to the United States. She said, she's in her like 80s now or 70s. She said, Mexico is like the United States in the 70s, but with internet. You know, it's more free. You don't need, you know, like there's a lot of this is why I think Gavin Newsom's, if he runs against JD Vance, he'll probably win. But Newsom is associated with California, which is associated with a bunch of chicken shit laws related to many things, you know, just chicken shit laws. And here in Mexico, you probably remember this, David, but you want to start a business, like you want to sell something in the park, you just do it. You don't need a business license. You want to sell, you want to sell, you know, tacos on a little, you know, grill or something. You just set it up and you do it. And it's like there's so many lessons here about entrepreneurism, and it's my like thing is if the more entrepreneurs we have in the United States, like real entrepreneurs. The more entrepreneurs we have in the United States, the less it's like one of the direct counter. It's like education. It's like a direct counter to fascism, because you can't really be an entrepreneur and also be a fascist. They don't go together, as you see now with these fascists that claim to be business people but are not business people. Like, you shouldn't be able to call yourself a billionaire if you made all your money off of fucking government contracts. You should be able to call yourself a welfare recipient. That you could call yourself that, you know. Anyway, so
Mexico. I lived in Mexico for 3 years. I was a brand manager. I did marketing, brand manager for Gillette in Mexico City. I have come to love Mexico and the Mexican people, and the way that Donald Trump has portrayed Latinos and Latino immigrants as being drug users and drug carriers, and that everybody's coming here to sell fentanyl, is so far from reality. You know, these folks come here. That was my career, interviewing multicultural segments, interviewing Latinos, or attending focus groups where they're talking about what's important in your life. I came here for my family, they say. Came here to raise a family because the economic conditions are better. It's just, and most plan to go back. And my experience with the interviews, but they don't, because their kids are born here and their lives are here. But they have been portrayed, and so many people, these MAGA folks, buy it. This idea that immigrants are carrying. What percentage of immigrants commit crimes? It's way lower
right.
than non.
And David, though, I don't think it's just MAGA people. I think it's the apathetic. It's the apathetics. It's the suburban class. And, what I would say, like the Trump voter, but maybe not MAGA. And I can't tell you how many people, and Virginia's seen it too, but we tell them we're moving to Mexico City, and they say, New Mexico? No, Mexico City. Why? Why the crime? And a lot of, and there's just this built-in ignorance, willful ignorance, by the way. Just fucking Google something now and again, and you'll see. Anyway, we could go on. Two white guys talking over the Latinas. Not a good look, David.
No, that example there, Virginia. Sorry.
Yes. So let's both of us be quiet to it and give the floor to Virginia. Sorry.
Well, first, I think that is, as a Latina, I can say this. We don't need to idolize our Latin American countries. I mean, even Mexico is not as free and easygoing as you presented, Justin. I disagree with that. There is a lot of bureaucracy here and a lot of a lot of paperwork and red tape that is unnecessary. Is part of the modernization of the institutions, but at least there is the will. I mean, there is a will of really promoting and including everyone, and that everybody has an opportunity and everybody has the conditions to growth. So at least is that, and you can blame the lack of institutional modernity or all the bureaucracy to our history as well, and political history. I mean, we have our challenge as well, but I think what makes a big difference is that the government is very clear about how far to intervene and how far not, and how to the priority is to give the opportunity to everyone, not to some, but to everyone to create the life that they want as much as they can, with the conditions and the resource and the poverty that we still experience. But that happened in all the countries. So I think that the intention and how the population also contributes to that makes the difference between countries like Mexico and the United States right now, at least, and not before, as you said, Justin, not before maybe was different that way. But I would like to go back to the marketing and communication strategies, because I think that to be able to contrast, to challenge the vision that a lot of people, I mean, most people have the vision they have about Latin Americans and immigrants in general because of media, because of communication, because of what politicians say, and the monopoly that there is about what is available in terms of information and visions out there. And I think that both marketing and in general communication and information media are playing a big role in what is happening right now. I mean, is how we portray women, how we portray minorities, how we portray other ethnicities and people from other backgrounds, how we portray them on the media, and who is challenging those visions and those ideas and those portrayed is what makes the difference. And in the United States, we're not making enough effort to use marketing and use social media to develop campaigns that will challenge the vision of the majority of people that are stay in a bubble of ignorance because they don't have the right information, because their mind hasn't been challenged. And I believe, because again, I'm not a marketer, but I study social marketing and the power of social marketing as a tool to change perspective about issues like HIV, domestic violence, the use of condoms. I mean, there are many social marketing strategies in history that have been very successful about changing the worldview of an entire population. And that was marketing. That was to market a product for profit. but with a clear intention and a clear morality behind it, that this is for the good of the majority. And we're going to use those tools and the theories that are behind it of influence, incidence, persuasion, but for good, not to hurt other people, but to actually, you know, create better conditions for everybody. So I think that there is a big opportunity here for corporation. It's not just pressuring the government to change policies or to, you know, like, or to protect their employees, but also to develop campaigns, to use the resource and use the marketing that they are going to use anyway to promote their products, to also promote ideals. I mean, it is a very powerful tool, I think.
Yeah.
What do you think?
It's what companies have done. You know, companies have taken a stand, and you know, whether we're talking about the NFL or we're talking about Ben and Jerry's, or we're talking about Chick-fil-A or Hobby Lobby that are Christian organizations, they take a stand too. But I think what's going on here now is we've got a very, very threatening president, and I do think, to Justin's earlier point, that it's fear. Look what happened with the universities. Look how he hit Harvard and Columbia, you know, and universities. Texas A&M just has announced they're getting rid of their DEI programs. You know, you are facing the wrath of the government of the United States if you take a stand now, and that's where I'm sort of thinking that what is maybe explainable cowardice on the part of marketers, because they're thinking incorrectly about doing what's best for their company and avoiding a boycott or something like that. Maybe that's where consumers come. You know, I'm not going to buy your brand if you don't come out with a statement supporting our community, or if you come out with a statement saying leave Canada alone. We're not going to have a 50 state, or we're not going to invade, or we're not going to slap tariffs on people that oppose our occupation of Greenland. I guess that's the latest today. It is absolute craziness, and I don't think it's craziness to be scared. If you're the chief marketing officer of a company, it's probably not the smartest thing for you to do. It probably goes against, you know, your ethos to do what's right for the company, because the company's going to get hit. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Maybe, I mean, we're running out of time, so I would like to ask you one question. The last question will be, what will be one thing, one step, one action, even as a small one, that if not all, but the majority of brands will start to implement right now, will make a huge impact in the situation that we're living right now? What will be one step, one thing?
You know, they're quick to put out a poster or a message in support of Pride Month. Cinco de Mayo, you know, we know that's Heritage Month, but you know, they're eager to get behind the right cause when there's no perceived risk. But because there is a perceived risk, that's why I'm thinking it might just take a boycott. You know, it might just take some drastic consumer action to sort of flip the wheel, if you will, and to let companies realize there are consequences. There are economic, financial consequences to my company and my brand by doing nothing. But I think it's going to have to come from consumers, because I just don't see anybody out there, and very few companies out there, that are really showing some spine.
And my last little thought there before we wrap with David is, to your point, Virginia, like, you're right. When there is like Nike has done wonders to promote women's sports, as an example, or empowering women, or Dove has done, or Unilever has done a great job with and body positivity and things like that.
Yeah.
But it's almost like Maslow's hierarchy to some extent, because if you don't have moral clarity when if moral clarity and shareholder value are incompatible. And so you rarely see a publicly traded company take a stand, because, and we can take it all the way back to Milton Friedman and this idea that Peter Drucker way back in the 60s said it was going to be the death of corporate consciousness or corporate, good was shareholder value, because it changes the game in such a way that even if a CMO has a conscience and has moral clarity, they have a very binary choice to go along or quit. And so I think if we're going to use marketing for good, you first have to take a stand against bad. That's to me, it's that simple. And if you can't take a stand against bad and you start promoting the good, it just comes across as like what I call woke washing or smarming. Like when we're in a recession and you see the Lexus ads, saying, "Oh, we bought each other Lexuses for Christmas," and there's starving homeless people and people being deported and everything. That it just looks tone deaf when you do it without any moral clarity.
Yeah. So,
David, restate the name of your new book. Is it out yet? Can people buy it? Or
yeah,
if not, when is it going to be out?
On Amazon last week. Yeah.
And what's the title?
Okay.
So my first book was Multicultural Intelligence, right? This is Polycultural Intelligence, 8 rules for connecting with Generation Alpha.
Great. It's very needed. And if, you're putting your ass out there and, so what can those of the people listening that agree with you, especially those of us that are also in marketing, what can we do to support you? What can we do to have your back?
Let's all, kind of look within at our consciences. Let's let morality be our guide. That's what's driving me. I feel like it's kind of stupid, Ma. I understand to be taking a stand with this guy in the White House, but I think I am on the side of what I perceive to be good, treating people right, treating other countries with respect. I think that so many of us have that. So many people that might be going along with things right now, we have that inside us. I would love it for people to just kind of ask themselves, is it right what we're doing? Is it right what's going on in Minnesota right now? It's not right. Is it right what we're talking about with Greenland? No, it's not right. Let's have a conscience. Let's stand up for what we believe in. That's what we've always done as Americans. Why are we not doing it now?
Exactly. Awesome. Well, we're going to say goodbye to you for now. We're going to have the second show, and I'll probably get more ranty Virginia. Sorry. I got a lot of pent up rage since this is the first recording of the new year. David, thank you. I'm sure we'll talk again. We have your back. Keep doing what you're doing, and we'll keep working together. So
blessings to you guys, and thank you for what you're doing. It's so important.
Back at you, sir. All right, take care.
Take care.
I went off there a little bit. I realized. At least I had the moment where I'm like, "Oh wait, this doesn't look good." Oh man. So thank you for your grace. Yeah.
It's like, it was a deja vu for me. It was like, I've been here before.
Yeah, I'm sure. So many
news.
times. I'm sorry. Yeah. Like 2 white guys like, "Oh, this poor Latinos." And we're not wrong necessarily, but anyway, at least I had the moment where I saw it and stopped. So
You did.
But on that, joking aside, is there something you wanted to say that you didn't get a chance to because we were yakking too much?
No, as you said, that you were right. I mean, it's true that it's totally unfair, and I think that everybody can see it. I mean, everybody on this side at least can see it. That it just makes no sense. I mean, it doesn't fit any of the rationale that they portray in there. That why Why discriminate people like that? Why stereotype them like that? Why, like all those things makes no sense. But for me, the point is more, I believe my focus as a complexity scientist is to understand how the system is behaving and why it's behaving that way, and how we change a system behavior. And a system change, a whole system, the whole society, when we talk about the big system, we're talking about the whole society, change when you change the patterns of interactions of the elements, meaning that when we change the way we relate with each other, period. It's as simple as that. It's not about, boycotts, for instance, change the patterns of interactions between consumer and the corporate sector. So obviously the system has to adjust to that change, to that new dynamic, and it move forward. It does something different, it start behaving differently. That's a change in patterns of interaction. But there are many other ways of changing the patterns of interactions, the way we interact with each other at not just the, let's say, the consumer level, but also in our neighborhoods, in our families, with our circles, in the media. There are many ways. The point is to just break the current pattern, say, like, this is the way people talk about these topics. This is the way people respond to these talks and to this discourse. This is the way I react when I hear something like that. So it's just be aware of how are we behaving with each other and with our environment, and what can we change. If we make a switch that is significant enough in our life, and everybody makes a switch, no matter what, at the end, then the whole system will have to accommodate to a new dynamic. And when you accommodate to a new dynamic as a system, you start seeing difference. You start seeing the impact. So it will be very interesting. And I insist on let's say, communication and marketing use communication channels to convey their messages. Their messages in most cases are very superficial, because it's about, I want to create a need that is not there, or maybe it's there, but what I want you is to convince you that your need is going to be fulfilled by buying my product. But the way they do that, they convince you of that, is through communication in many ways: visual communication, text, oral communication, but it's always communication. Communication is the sage of the system, let's say, is the blood of the system, is the way, like, imagine our body is like the communication is the blood that takes vitamins and nutrients and information all over the body. Even so, the hands communicate with the brain through blood and through the nervous system, of course. So that impulse, the electric impulse or the blood, is communication in our system, is the way that information is transmitted, is reproduced, is start making an impact. So I think that we need to be more responsible in general when we think about what we communicate to whom and why and how, because that's what's going to determine if we reproduce the status quo, if we sustain the status quo, we keep things the same, or we start promoting change. The way we communicate is also a pattern of interaction. We change the way we communicate with others, and what we communicate with others, and the patterns of interactions start changing. And we can do it. The thing is that we can all do that, not just companies.
Yeah, and related to that is you remind me of a couple of things. Two things that are not happening enough, and I think it's because the Republicans, Trump, all that, and really it's Stephen Miller behind the scenes, and it's not him. He's just a useful idiot. They are so good at propaganda, at dominating the headlines and getting the reaction of, like, did you hear what happened today? And that it distracts from these, like, truly systemic things you can do. And there's two that come to mind. One is shareholder activism, where groups of people get together, and I talked about, these big companies are, they listen to their shareholders, which are like, don't mess with my stock price. Well, consumer or shareholder activists a group of them get together, kind of like like the story, in which is now a movie about GameStop to some extent, and buy shares in companies so that you can go to the board meetings and call out the bullshit, or no, the shareholder meetings and call out the bullshit. You don't really see that right now. Number two is, and this is a new idea that you just sparked, is there's guys like Reid Hoffman, Mark Cuban, Oprah Winfrey, LeBron James, Taylor Swift. These are billionaires that openly disagree or push back, stand up against what's happening right now. If they bought ad space and they bought ad space and started to like push back with ad campaigns, that would be a counterweight, especially to kind of there is still, sadly, sort of a mushy middle, the suburban class, for example. And you see the campaigns or the ad campaigns that like nonprofits do, and the classic one with like the Humane Society and the Sarah I can't remember how to pronounce her last name, and about the sad looking dogs, and how that was very effective. We could do the same thing, but we need somebody to back it. And having Patagonia only, or some of these other, waiting for brands to do it, I don't think it's going to work. I think people with money need to do it, and on social media and et cetera. There needs to be a counter comm strategy. Short version of what I was trying to say. And it's so scattered, and I think it's partially because we see there's like horrible things happening, shot on video. We get gaslight by these fuckers in the administration that it didn't happen that way, but you can see the video of all kinds of stuff, not just Renee Good's murder. And we're so busy reacting to that, where the idea of like producing something that is to counter the bullshit seems almost impossible, because there's such an overwhelming amount of bullshit that's happening and horribleness that's happening. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, not somebody, but somebody's. I mean, a group
that's what I meant.
of people
Collectively, yes.
have to come up with and sponsor and promote a mass media campaign, communication campaign. It's not just mass media, but the communication happens through many channels,
across,
not just mass media, but communication, mass communication strategy for social change. That absolutely is definitely. But again, as a communication for social change expert, I have to warn about something related to that.
Okay.
It's not just a change in attitude and information that matters. If the practice, there is theories about the gap, the knowledge, attitude, practice. I mean, that theory that first you understand that you have the information, then that information will change your attitude, and when you change your attitude, you change your behavior and your practice. That's not always the case. When it's complex, there is a big gap between the attitude and the practice, and that's when the difference happens. Really, is in the practice. It doesn't matter. Let's say that we have, you know me as you know me, and I'm like me. Everybody knows who I am, right? And I decided overnight that I become a Buddhist, or that I became whatever. But the next day, I behave exactly the same way. I say exactly the same thing. I relate exactly the same way with other people. It doesn't matter if in my mind I change my identity. It will not have any impact if I don't change my practice. Mm-hmm. So it's a combination of things. For one thing is to really start a huge mass media communication strategy, no mass media, mass communication strategy for social change, to increase the level of critical mindfulness and the attitude and information, and really have people that are well informed to make the right decisions. But also, it can be, maybe people don't need, or it's more difficult to have everybody on board with the same level of information, the same level of skills for, critical mind and attitude. maybe that's not the way to achieve massive results, but maybe it's inviting them to do one very easy step that anybody can do. Like if the easier you make for people to start changing a little bit, a small behavior, that in a scale, when you talk about system, you start with the tiny, imagine a broccoli. If everybody becomes a little flower of the broccoli, then you have a huge, beautiful broccoli. So it's about not asking people to change the world at their personal level, but to ask them to do one small step that is easy to do, that is like a no-brainer, that is like, come on, you have no excuse, and that will reproduce. And when you see a scale, it's going to make a big impact.
Yeah, I hear you. And I have a follow-up to that, but also some historical context is this is really the first time that businesses, which therefore also means mostly white people still, big business, has ever had to make a stand against their own government. During World War II, the World War II and other efforts, even in 9/11, the alliance between advertising and marketing and mass communication and the government to promote patriotism or unity or whatever, they don't know how to do it in reverse. And I think it's partially because I don't think most white people know how to protest or be activists anyway. I don't think they know how to do that at a systemic level because they've never had to. So, but going back to what you said, and I think it's fascinating, the broccoli analogy in particular. So you take, there's all this fuckery from this administration, but just take some of the fascist tactics, wildly unconstitutional tactics, like asking people for their papers, which is unconstitutionally illegal and a violation of the Fourth Amendment and the First Amendment, a bunch of other things, and they just ignore it. So the average person in the suburban class, if you were to put together a mass communication campaign, I'm putting you on the spot here, but a mass communication campaign to kind of start with that one thing, because you talked about awareness is not enough. I love what you said there. It has to lead to action, just like in marketing for products. If brand awareness worked, Kmart and BlackBerry and Pan Am wouldn't be out of business. It's not about brand awareness. It's about brand. It's about conversion to sales. In your case, you're talking about conversion to behavior at a micro level that leads to a macro level. What would be your call to action if you were going to put together a mass communication strategy that targets suburbia about ICE and these fascist behaviors? What would be your push point of the behavior request that you would make of the average suburban person?
But you are putting me on the spot. I mean, I think that this is a very complex problem, and there's a lot of implications, like legal, even life-threatening implications to decide one specific action. But I'm going to give you an example anyway. I mean, I'm not saying that this is the one, but I'm going to give you an example. The United States was very successful, let's say, with a campaign that after 9/11, when they said, if you see something, report it. That has been tergiversed and that has been misused to attack groups that are not terrorists and that, just a part of the old discrimination wave. But what happened with that campaign is that it empowered everybody, all the people, to participate in the prevention of something that will affect everybody. So it gives a little bit of power to citizens to do something about it. So let's say, using that example, and some communities are already doing this. So that's what I bring it up, because it's not something that came from my head and is impossible and it's a dream. It's something that is actually happening. That if all the communities get organized, and even if it's not 100% of the population of that community, but the majority of the community that said, if you see some action, discriminatory action, you see ICE arriving to some places or something, just spread the word, get organized, self-organize ourselves. We're gonna, let's say, every family that is supportive, that believes in that, says, I'm gonna protect one immigrant family, let's say. I'm going to be the protector, the backup, I'm going to have their back, even if it's just one small family. But many people do that. You're going to have a community that is organized, self-organized to protect itself. That it will make a huge difference. I'm going to give you another example. In South Africa, for instance, when I was working on entertainment education communication strategies, South Africa, there was a television show, and that's the power of communication. It was a telenovela, let's say a social soap opera that was produced and broadcast in South Africa that addressed the issue of domestic violence. And domestic violence in that country at that time especially was a private matter. The laws, the police, the judge, they did nothing because that was between men and women in their private home. And so it was a private issue. And nobody could do anything about it. And the level of domestic violence were huge. So the soap opera, what they portray was not like change the politics or anything, because that was something that the common citizen cannot do. But they portrayed an episode where the neighbors in a community, when they heard that one of the men was abusing his wife, they all the women came up with pots and pans, and they started just banging the pots and the pans on the neighborhood, making a very loud noise, and going to the house, around the house. That's not illegal. You're on the street. You're not invading property. You're just banging pots and pans. But the level of attention and noise and drama and scandal and, that created, put so much pressure on the perpetrator, on the abuser, that he stopped doing that. And the whole was shame, was was the social shaming, was the calling to attention, was the creating disturbance. So the police have to arrive. They were not doing anything that was really hard for them to do, because that didn't expose them to harm or to be detained or to lose their life or anything like that. But there was something that they could do. And the campaign, that idea became massive in South Africa. And they really reduced a lot of the domestic abuse situation there because of small actions that population took. If we do something similar here, what is one thing that we can do that doesn't expose our life? We're not going to be shot by that, but that we can do to support, to contrast the abuse of the institutions and some groups, and to support the community that we're part of. We can see big difference, big changes there.
So that's very interesting, because this is happening at a grassroots level. Both examples. There's lots of videos of finding out where the ICE agents, I use air quotes, are staying, and they just play loud music and honk their horns all night so they can't sleep. But grassroots doesn't defeat lies. Not quick enough. It is not fast enough. They're morally correct, and the behavior, it's like it. I'll use the example of banging the pots and pans, and it saved that woman's life, but it didn't fix domestic violence. And
it did make an influence. Yes, big influence.
But what I'm saying is we need both, in the sense of, because as you were talking, I had an epiphany. It's like, why is the U.S. so different with this than other countries? And it struck me is white people, especially straight white people, middle class and up, have been kind of trained or conditioned. They've outsourced their representation to a political party. If you look at brown people, black people, queer people, women and their allies that are committed to reproductive rights, they did outsource it to the Democrats, and then the Democrats fucked it up. But as far as reproductive rights, but the other issues of social justice, people take representation on it for themselves, and they create their own communities, and they vote in certain ways, but it's not like party orientation. And I think that that's a big part of Like if you, again, taking marketing principles and a target audience, I don't think there's going to be a fundamental like pushback against fascism until there is a, for lack of a better term, shame campaign for the white middle class. That's what I would do. It would be about, what the fuck are you doing? Like, you know, it would be, it's a shame campaign. I don't know another way to do it, because if they're not willing to take ownership over it's like Jesus said, you know, those who have ears to hear, let them hear. Meaning, if they don't have any awareness of their own responsibility or accountability, that is the lack of it is producing the apathy or the tisking or the pearl clutching, that, oh, that's so bad for those people. It's got to be something that is, it's got to be something where it awakens them to, in order for them to know what to do to take action, like the average suburban white people group, that they have to know how it affects them at a intrinsic level. And I say shame campaign because I don't know a better way to say it.
Yeah, maybe that was not the right word, but yes.
But my point is
personal for them.
It's and so at the end of the day, it's either going to be a reward or there's going to be like an accountability. It's got to, you know, it's pretty binary related to, you know, why don't you care enough to take action? That's what I mean. And so I'm using shame somewhat for hubris, and also because I don't know a better word for it. But I'll tell you this, where that worked was in the civil rights movement, and which led to, that was a specific effort by the civil rights leaders to essentially say to the white people, do you agree with this? And there were ad campaigns like that. Do you agree with what's happening to the Black community related to these things? And but what's missing now is there's no organizing body that's doing anything about it. And because most people have outsourced that would be against fascism, it's either people like me that used to be Republicans that don't feel like we belong in the Democratic Party, or it's people that are Democrats that they voted for Democrat their whole life, and here we are in this fucking situation despite their voting record. So there needs to be almost like a different kind of mass movement, and like a call to arms, for lack of a better term, or an enrollment strategy, which goes back to somebody's got to fund that. Somebody's got to fund a campaign of what I jokingly refer to as myself as the activated white dude. Because there's David, there's me, there's others out there. There's the Cluck Hut guy, the Trevor Silva that we had on. You know, they're out there, but we're not organized into any sort of group. We're just doing we're taking advantage of our platforms and the fact that they're likely not going to come after us, you know, because we're white dudes. But that's not enough. There's no organizing factor. I'll even use this example. The people that could run on the Democratic Party in 2028, probably against J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, whoever they put up, that's some bootlicker part of the, you know, leftover remnant of Trump. They might win, but it's not reform. It doesn't change anything. Like there's no singular representation or motivation, especially with, again, white people with money or white people with security, let's say, to do anything any different except sort of just wait for it to go away. And I don't think it's going to go away until you get white suburban people to wake the fuck up. It's just going to keep happening and happening and happening. As I said when David was still on, fascism feeds on suburban apathy. And that's where the ad campaign comes in, because you could use ad campaigns or mass media or mass communication to counter apathy through what I'm just calling shame. So,
Yeah, and make it personal. Yeah, the point is to make it personal, that the people start thinking, this is about me, this is affecting me as well.
yeah.
Even if it's a different way, I need to do something about it because nobody's going to do it for me. And it's my
Well,
life.
if you use the example you just brought to something in mind too, is the struggle for gay rights was, generations, decades. And it was the flip to the point that the which could be eroded because of MAGA and Christian nationalism, but nevertheless, the flip was when they switched their communication strategy to "this isn't fair" to love is love. And there's a subtle shaming within that. If you're a heterosexual person and you love somebody and you have the right to love somebody, and you're saying other people can't feel that way, if you're a Southern Baptist Christian nationalist, you don't believe that now. You could pass all the laws in the world. But again, the apathetic middle was moved enough that it changed. It created it overturned DOMA. It put in the Marriage Equality Act. There was a change because the part of the mass strategy, the mass communication strategy, was they switched the messaging, and it worked. And we just need a love is love, other than fuck ICE. That's great for protest signs, but that's not a communication strategy. Or defund ICE. You just it's not a love is love. We need a version of that that is truly anti-fascist in its approach.
That's what I was saying. The point is to direct the efforts at changing the patterns of interactions. Love is love.
Right.
That awareness is a change in the patterns of interaction.
Yes.
Shaming, punishment, and protest are not changing the patterns of interactions. They're just, they're just highlighting a problem and making it visible. But that doesn't change the pattern of interaction at the global level unless that we focus on that, on changing the patterns of interactions.
But I would just say, though, I do believe that there's a subtle, what's another word than shame? Because it was like guilt. Maybe that's the word. Remember, I was talking about something and I said, oh, this is funny. I don't remember what it was. It was related to something, some inequity, racial inequity or something. And I said, I feel shame. And you said, you don't feel shame, you feel guilt. I was like, ouch. You remember you saying that? Yeah, that's what it is. It was a little guilt. It was like, oh, wait, if I have the right to love who I want to love, why shouldn't anyone? That's what I'm saying, is that equivalency related to the apathetic white middle is where we're at. So
we can have a whole podcast about the difference and what is the impact of, in terms of behavioral change theories, the impact of punishment and shame and guilt and all that on long-term behavioral change.
Yeah,
we can have another podcast on that if you want.
Yeah,
because I think it's more complex than that.
Well, of course, yes, but the brilliance of what you're saying about applying, the communication, complexity science and social change, that triumvirate, complexity science, social change, and communication. That's what's missing. Honestly, I think you got to write more about that. I know that you're going to be producing more content about systemic leadership and stuff, but that is nobody's talking like that, right now. They're talking about activism, but they're talking about activism, and that's fine. And they're talking about representation, and that's fine. But nobody's really talking about it from a systemic perspective. So after we're off air, I got more thoughts on that.
Okay.
So,
okay.
All right. Well, that was a very vigorous conversation. I feel like I got a little ranty. I hope not. An ask for our audience. We want to meet more founders. We love talking to people that are solo professionals doing what they're doing in the world. But we really want to talk to more founders. We had the awesome ladies from Little Blue Card on. We've had Trevor Silva on. We're going to have a few others coming up. But if you know of any founders, any owners of businesses that are system shakers, and there's thousands of them, we just need to meet them, please introduce us. And we'll put a link in the show notes of where you can submit their name, and I'll reach out to them and invite them to be on the show. So with that, we look forward to you listening to us do our thing on the Massive Change Show, and use your voice. Use your voice. Thank you very much.
Thank you.